Welcome back, friends and family, to another episode of the Backdoor Cut Show, brought to you by the Barn Burner Podcast Network and Dash Radio's Nothing But Net channel. So if you're listening to us on the Dash Radio app, we appreciate that. You can also find us on Spotify or iTunes, anywhere you listen to podcasts, by following Backdoor Cut Show. You can also read our content over at the-barnburner.com. With me today, I'm Zach. Find me on Twitter at BarnBurnerBro. I've got with me Sam and Rich. Sam, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Shout out Grizz for playing a tough game in the playing game, which was hard fought. We'll talk about that. And also, it's been a while since we mentioned, but the NBA's done a great job with the social justice movement. So I feel like we should mention on the show, justice for Breonna Taylor. And it's been over 150 days and nothing's yet occurred in the Louisville Metro Police Department. So that's something we haven't brought up a lot on the show, but definitely don't want to lose that momentum. Rich, what's going on with you, man?
Yeah, man, doing good. Definitely same justice for Breonna Taylor first and foremost. And I'm doing good. Got to see the first ABC primetime game for the Grizz broadcast in 5 years. So, the boys put on the show yesterday for the country to see, for the world to see, maybe. Can't complain. Proud of it.
I think let's start off with talking about the ABC broadcast and how they had never watched the Grizzlies play in their entire lives.
They did not know Jaren Jackson was on the roster. They had no idea.
No, at the very end, you could tell they got some sort of producer note, and it was dropped in there by Breen. At the very end, he was like, "This Grizzly has a bright future." They're not playing without Jaren Jackson Jr. and Tyus Jones, and someone gave him like a sticky note, probably with those names on. He probably didn't even know who they were. But Tyler Jenkins was commonly mentioned. It was replete. I mean, and I'm not talking about just like once and then he's corrected. Like they called him Tyler Jenkins throughout the whole broadcast with conviction. Like that was his name. And then Mark Jackson at multiple points talked about all the Portland Trailblazers had been through during the bubble and how they'd faced a lot of adversity and without mentioning, of course, the Grizzlies like hobbling through the bubble, injury riddled. It's just it was a tough hang to some degree, but cool to see Ja show out. And you could tell that those guys, literally Breen and Mark Jackson, had never really watched him because they were legitimately reacting like we had all year on stuff that he does. They were like, "Oh, he's really fast," and then like one of them was like, "Wow, his first step's like lightning quick, and he gets to the rim at will." And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, like what do you think was happening in Memphis? But it's just, I'm glad that they're seeing it, but it was just kind of a affirmation that like no one actually has watched this team, and I don't know what they thought we did to win 30-something games, but I don't know. So here we were. But what other thoughts did you have from the playing game, Zach?
Dude, all they needed was to get if Prana could have sent him his pregame notes, they would have had more than they needed. Heck, if they just got on and saw the Grizzlies PR Twitter, they usually tweet out pregame notes that a lot of the announcers will go over. I don't even think they looked at anything like that. ESPN, ABC totally just didn't care.
It's
and
weird because
Jackson seemed so asleep for most of the game. Yeah. I know he's kind of like that, but
yeah, I'm not a big Mark Jackson guy. He has a couple phrases like "Mama, there goes that man," which is classic. But he really doesn't know what he's talking about. And during the broadcast, unless it's about guys that he coached against, like when he was coaching with the Dubs, which he always finds a way to work in. By the way, anytime he's talking about Damian Lillard making threes, he's like, I used to coach a guy who used to shoot threes like that by the name of Stephen Curry. And
don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah, what does this have anything to do with anything? But whatever. Be your own biggest fan. That's what we should all be.
I mean, honestly, the craziest thing for me is that wasn't the worst broadcast that I saw in the bubble in regards to the Grizzlies. I want to give a shout out to Mark Jones of ESPN also, who called the Grizzlies Pelicans game, and it was just utter lack of planning. Let's see, Tyler Jenkins. That's where Tyler Jenkins began. So I think Mark Jackson got it from Mark Jones. I think he called DeAndre Melton, maybe 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And then he's even talking about the Grizz playing the Pelicans. He's like, yeah, they played once before this season. They played twice to that point. That was the third meeting. And it's just be better. Be more prepared. If you're calling the game, man, do your research, do your homework. We can get on and shoot the shit on a podcast, but these are paid national commentators who clearly
literally
like
in the bubble. They're in the bubble. Like that,
yeah, they ain't got shit else to do.
They haven't watched a fucking Memphis Grizzly game. Just be straight up, bro. Or can we get people who have, like, and it's just, I mean, we're used to it, right? It's just the utter lack of national non-recognition. But it's just crazy. But the Tyler Jenkins thing is really killing. I'm like, bro, like, come on. This man's name is Tyler Jenkins, bro. Come on.
He's a head coach in the NBA.
Head coach in the fucking
It's also
NBA.
not like he jumped from high school. He's been in the
right. He's paid his dues. Like,
he was a championship winner in the G League. Like, he's not like, how do they know Nick Nurse like the back of their hands? And well, I mean, he wanted a title, but even last year during his rookie year coaching, I feel like everyone knew Nick Nurse, but Taylor Jenkins, they just can't get right. It's tough, and it's one of those things you can see too when they're in the announcer's booth. There's like this black monitor that has all the information they need readily available. It has all the rosters, all the numbers of the players. Like, it has like, they'll get fed stats that are interesting to like regurgitate onto the broadcast. Like some NBA stat nerd sitting somewhere in fucking Secaucus, like typing up like, this is DeAnthony Melton's first like 7 rebound game since 2015. Like, it'll pop up. Like, they in the bubble, they've got interesting camera angles of their booth, so you can see that. And I've seen that like happen. So their job is done for them. All they have to do is be able to like read things off a prompter, which apparently is too much to ask. But that is always frustrating, but a little bit comical. If you're a Grizzlies fan, it's pretty par for the course. But outside of no Conchar and the terrible commentating, how do we feel about the playing game?
The playing game was strange because there were points in the game where I watched a lot of it on replay, and I had knew the outcome by the time I watched it. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way we lose this game. There's no way. Like, Grizzlies are on a roll. They're taking care of business right now. They fought back. Like, there's no way that this game goes south. But sure enough, Portland comes out, outscores Memphis by 9 in the fourth quarter, and just puts it away with C.J. McCollum, takes the team on his back. Certified Grizz killer. He's been one for years, and he rose to the occasion, just scored. Ja was not even playing that bad a defense on him down the stretch, but CJ just a gamer. Like, him and Dame are gamers, and they rise to the occasion in that situation. And that's what you hope that, Ja and Jaren can be at some point. And Ja has already done that a lot of times for a rookie. He's already showed that he's capable of that. But like, Dame and CJ are 28 and 30, and Ja just turned 21. He's like nowhere even near his prime. So like the ceiling is really exciting for him. Now, though he wasn't super efficient the other day, career high 35 points. In the bubble, he averaged almost 10 assists per game. And to me, that's like the most notable difference between his pre-bubble and during the bubble, is that he averaged almost 10 assists per game in the bubble, which is about 3 more than he was averaging for the rest of the season. He averaged a couple more points, but his volume of shooting was up, and his efficiency was not super good during most of the bubble compared to the rest of the season. But the way he was getting everyone else involved, and in this game in particular, like, he knew he had to be the guy. So he went out there and did everything that he could to be the guy. Even hit 50% from behind the arc, which is very uncommon for him, especially down in Orlando. But that was just very, very encouraging to see that part at the least. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, man. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, I really was like, wow, this is really happening. Like, this fucking like sudden death ass NBA game, right? Like a game 7 before the playoffs even start. And so, Portland jumped out quick, man. And I was like, oh shit. But Jenkins called a timeout, and you could tell, like, whatever he executed, whatever the coaching staff went through in that timeout or that space between the first and second quarter, the Grizz went out and executed the fuck out of that shit. They started feeding JV in the post. They got out and ran, and I looked up and like they want to run, and they had like clawed back. I think that's just a testament to the team, for sure. Just no quit, no fight. Like there's no way they could have just laid down, but they fought tooth and nail. Kyle Anderson just like went off in the second quarter, just dishing that thing. Like he was just fighting JV, feeding the big man, and the guys just looked good. And like there was a moment in the fourth quarter where I think we won a little run. I'm like, damn, they might pull this off. Like, this might actually be happening. Like, I was on Twitter and like the top like 12 trends nationwide or worldwide were like Grizzly player names. It was like Tolliver and fucking like shit. Like Anthony Tolliver was trending. Like, and you know, they put on a show, and like my dad even texted me, and he's somebody who is very rare to share praise. He's always gonna find something critical. But he texted me, he was like, Grizz bright future. It was just Grizz period bright future. And I was like, that's all I need to hear. Yeah, you're damn right. Because they're ready, they're hungry, and I'm just thinking about all the missing pieces. And yeah, Portland can talk about, you know, Rodney Hood and Trevor Ariza, but that's not Jaren Jackson. That's not our backup point guard, which is why Ja is playing 40+ minutes a night. Didn't take a breather in the second half yesterday, because there legitimately wasn't another true point guard on the roster to spell him. And I'm just excited to see, you know, how we continue to build from this, because for me, yesterday didn't feel like an ending, right? It really felt like a beginning.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like the end of the season. It felt like, fuck, like we about to take off. This shit is about to get real. You know, next season, we might go from the hunters to the hunted. People are going to be coming back for that spot, you know, Golden State, other teams, etc. And I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, how the Grizz handle that shit. And I'm excited as fuck that we have Ja Morant to lead us through that.
My man Ja playing with a broken thumb was revealed for the last 4 games. And it's something I didn't even notice with the splint he had on his thumb, but also would explain his shooting being even worse. You know, he shoots with his right hand. That was the broken thumb. So can't imagine that being healthy for your jump shot. So, you know, that makes some sense, and maybe why he was missing the floater that he usually makes and all that. But yeah, they fought like hell. And I thought that the game was great theater too, just for the average NBA goer that tunes in and gets to see the Grizzlies. Like, we looked fun, you know, and it was one of those things where a lot of people were saying, oh, wish the Suns had been in, wish the Pelicans had been in. But then I thought when they tuned into that, they were like, oh shit, like this is actually really fun. Yeah. And there's a lot of people hating, like, you know, like Pelicans Twitter and Suns Twitter that are still being haters about it. But like, if everyone's being honest with themselves, like that was a great game, objectively. And it was just you know, before the game, they hyped up with the montage of Dame versus Ja. You know, it was a battle of the point guards. They had their narrative. The NBA loves the storylines, and they were able to find one, you know, with these 2 mid-major point guards, one kind of at the end of his prime and one far from entering his prime. And kind of they hyped that up, and it literally, I mean, it delivered, you know, past their wildest expectations, I imagine. But also, I thought the Grizzlies played like probably the best game that I've seen them play, maybe this season. You know, maybe definitely in the bubble. But in terms of all the percentages, we'll say that I looked at the plus minuses of everyone, and Ja was like a minus 18 or something. I think probably due to his 8 turnovers and the fact that he was, you know, one-on-one guarding like 2 of the best bucket-getting guards in the league. So it was like probably his defense skewed his numbers. I mean, I don't think he was horribly inefficient getting his 35, but, you know, he wasn't as efficient as we know him to normally be. But all the scheme was good, man. Jiggins had a good-ass game plan. Like, we doubled Dame for the most part. We didn't let him get comfortable. Dylan did a great job on Dame. And, I mean, really, Dame didn't have a good game. Like, he was 4 of 15, I believe, maybe 5 of 16. And all 5 of those shots were threes. And I think he was like 5 of 14 from 3 or something like that. Most of his points came from the free throw line, which I also want to get into. And, I mean, you know, like I get it. You know, like superstars are going to get those calls, and he's going to go to the line a lot. But, you know, notably, the Blazers shot 19 more free throws than the Grizzlies. They made almost all of them, so they capitalized for sure. But, you know, when you looked at all of the measurable stats, you know, not the plus minus, not the advanced metrics, you looked at, you know, 3-point shooting percentage, threes made, assists, rebounds, you know, turnovers. We had more, but they didn't really even capitalize off of them. We actually played a better game all around statistically. And I mean, I have to imagine there's not many times that the other team wins. In when you look at stats like that, it was just a game of free throws. And to me, it's like I was on Twitter pissed off because I felt like the league had no intention of letting the Grizzlies win that game if they had their preference. And to me, that the only way you can control is free throws. That's like the only way that they can control points. They can't control like if Ja Morant goes crazy or if like we bomb a bunch of threes, which we did. Like we made more threes than we usually make, more efficiently than we ever make. Like we played such a better game than we have that the only way they could control the outcome was free throws. And I'm not saying like it was literally a phone call down, but I think that they didn't want us to get to the second game. This is conspiracy, Sam, because then it's like we could win game 2. You know, like if we get there, then suddenly they're really looking at a situation where the Grizzlies are the 8th seed, and they definitely don't want that. So they want Dame versus LeBron, like and they should, because it's like it's a profiteering center. You know, it's like they're trying to make money, and they just lost a bunch of money. So I get it, but you can't tell me that like 19 more free throws isn't absurd. Like, especially the fact that we were attacking the rim, we are an attacking team. We're not a team like Golden State, for example, that just shoots a bunch of threes. So it's feasible that there could just be less drives to the rim and therefore less free throws to award. Like Ja was going to the rim every possession, just recklessly. And JV was scoring in the post recklessly. And like I'm not one of those ones that thinks that like they should have called a ton of fouls, but if they're going to call it on one side, call it both ways. But what do you guys think about that? Do you think there's any credibility to that, or am I just being such a Grizzlies homer that I can't see past it?
What's really interesting about that is when Memphis played Portland a couple of weeks ago, the tip-off to the restart, it was pretty much the inverse with the free throws. Memphis took 50, and Portland only took 34 in that game. So, like, completely, and also that game was officiated much differently because I don't know if the officials were trying to set a precedent or what exactly they were trying to do, but there was, like, 3 or 4 technical fouls for very minimal stuff, like people flexing after they dunked on someone, that kind of thing. So the officiating was very odd in that game, but it's obviously in the NBA's best interest to see Dame, the hottest guy in the bubble, and against LeBron. And if they could have, they would have gotten Phoenix there in that playing game instead of us, just because what a great story that is. 8-0, Booker's going crazy. Booker versus Dame and CJ. I mean, that's good. That's good theater right there for sure. But I think subconsciously, they were thinking, hey, that's just how it always is. Like, those guys are always getting the calls. The All-Stars are always going to get the calls. The veterans, the referees are just going to be probably biased towards them compared to the guys who've just come in the league, haven't earned their stripes, don't have the rapport with them. I think it could be a lot of that human error and bias just kind of comes into play.
I think that's like kind of up to the coach too to point that out throughout the game. Maybe Taylor did, like, or Tyler or whatever. But like I feel like pulling the refs aside and being like, "Go ref, like look at the free throws," and then I feel like refs always, anytime that's pointed out, Zach and I always talk about this, they immediately start calling fouls on the other team, like to equal the fouls and to try to get the free throws more even, because they don't want to be accused of, because that is such a tangible way to like, and of course the explanation could be one team just fouling more than the other, and we do foul a lot. But in this game, I feel like it wasn't that. Like it was just guys going to the rim, and then they would get the whistle and we wouldn't. And that was just like, I mean, anytime you go to the rim, it's bang bang, and like I never know what's a foul at the rim, like ever. Like, unless it's a clear swipe down on an arm, and there really wasn't a lot of that. In fact, Grayson, clearly blocked a shot, and then gets called for a foul, and then, reacts accordingly. Doesn't even yell at the ref, just turns around and is pissed off because he clearly blocked it. And, they give him a tech, and then they don't let Jenkins challenge it. Like, he's actively trying to challenge on the sidelines. They just like to pretend like they don't hear him, presumably. And then Portland inbounds the ball quickly, and then we're off and running again. And that was like a big game momentum changer right there. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I know I'm small market energy right now, and I'm like thinking we're being picked on, but like, I just feel like we didn't get a fair shake. I feel like we played as good of a game as we possibly could, and we still couldn't get the win. And that's just kind of it just sucks.
Yeah, man. I think, I knew what it was going to be in the first quarter. There were so many whistles in that first quarter in favor of Portland. It was just ridiculous. And you bring up Jenkins with the challenge, and everyone has been actively dying for this man to use a challenge. And it's just,
I don't know what the deal is.
It's so right that the one moment he wants to use a challenge, he gets rooked. Like, he can't even fucking challenge it.
He gets rooked.
And it's just fucking, it sucks, man. Like you said, he rooked as hell. Because Grayson blocked that shit, first and foremost. Grayson blocked. Oh,
he would have won the challenge.
Yeah, he would have definitely won the challenge.
Take away 2 free throws. Like, suddenly we 2 points off the board, our ball, right. And then no tech. Yeah. So it's like, that's a 3-point swing and a momentum swinger. Like, it was a huge point in the game.
Huge momentum swinger. Yeah. But like you said, like, we know what it is. We know the narrative they're pushing. for the 1-8 seed. Even on the pregame show, like it wasn't even about Blazers versus Grizzlies. It was like, what's the over under? Let's take bets on how much Dame is going to score. And I'm just like, bro, can we just like preview the game, please? And even at the half, like, the Grizzlies played a damn good first half. And thank God, like Jalen Rose finally mentioned like Valanciunas in like the final 10 seconds of the broadcast. Like, oh yeah, shout out to Jonas Valanciunas balling too.
Like the music was already playing in the graphic
the
was showing up. They talked about Nurkic talked about Nurkic and his grandmother, RIP, passed away from COVID. But like, first of all, Nurkic is a grade A bitch, dude. I hate watching Nurkic play. Like, oh my gosh, I hate watching him.
I hate watching his defense. I hate watching him whine. He is immensely skilled. He is immensely skilled, great hands, like the complete opposite of Hassan Whiteside. But I definitely hate watching him play basketball, and it's just whining and shit. And like in the halftime show, I'm just like, dude, like, are y'all gonna talk about the other team at all? Like, I know you don't want to. I know you don't. But can you at least mention like there was a 22-6 run here in the second? Like, come on, man, it's fucking bullshit. Yeah,
it is. I mean. And I don't know if anyone ever points it out. It's like there's the only problem. That's why I always Chris Vernon. I'm glad he exists because I'm glad that he has the platform now at the Ringer, and he actually says all this stuff on a national scale. And like basically anytime he says these things, all of his Ringer compatriots who are all Boston, New York, like guys from big markets, guys and girls from big markets that are fans of big teams for the most part are always kind of like, yeah, I don't know, and like they don't really buy it. But they do start thinking about it, like, and they never. I will say they never have a rebuttal to it. They're never like, oh, here's why that's not the case. Blah 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 blah. And like every time Verno would go in about the Pelicans and how all the league wanted was the Pelicans to be in, they set this thing up for the Pelicans, and the Pelicans sucked ass just like they did all season. And everyone's like, well, it's just because Zion wasn't back in shape, and Alvin Gentry is the bad coach. And when earlier in the season, Alvin Gentry was this great basketball mind, he's really going to have them humming. It's just like let's stop getting in the spin zone and let's talk about like what actually happened, not like what you hoped would happen or how you can spin it to be your way. Like, and the facts are 19 more free throws is absurd when two teams are going to the rim. That's insane. Like that's indefensible to me. And like, I would love to see like a third party audit the game and be like, this is completely unfair. Like if you're going to call that a foul, then this should have been a foul or, and all of the above, but I don't know. Like, we'll hope that Ja starts getting those calls, and he likely will. But I don't know when suddenly they decide that a guy's good enough to get those calls, or like I don't know how that works. I guess it's just a matter of like once the refs know you, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think if anyone is gonna get that for the Grizzlies, it's gonna be Ja, because he's the one. So he's the one going to the rim, and he's gonna be the superstar of the team. Even if Jaren becomes. I just think that Ja has the more superstar personality and is going to be – he's already the face of the team pretty much. Jaren's perfectly content, it seems, to be the second, 1B to the 1A. And honestly, he's already fouling so much. He's not going to have any room to talk because he objectively fouls so much. Mm-hmm. He cannot not play intelligently, whereas Ja, on the other hand, is much more – he's much quicker, much more adept at his basketball IQ, and I think that will encourage him to be, work to develop these relationships with the officials and have the potential to be on the other side of this, down the road.
Yeah, we'll see. I saw him in that game, the Portland game, once the whistle started going. I saw a couple times Ja would jerked his head when he was getting downhill and he'd get bumped. He'd jerk and never any call. And then McCollum would do it and there'd immediately be a call. It was like, I was just like, dude, what are we even doing here? Like, is this,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like you can't start a race from two different points and then expect the team starting way behind the starting line to be able to win. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm obviously watching through the Homer eyes, but anything else from the game? JV had a great game. I mean, everyone I thought played well. No Josh Jackson. He seems to have completely fallen out of the rotation, which to me would exhibit the front office's plans to not sign him or to not pick up his option, maybe. Or maybe we pick him up as a warm body on the bench. And I don't know. But he's clearly out of favor with Jenkins, which it seems like really fucking hard to get to that state. Because think about how many minutes Marco played. And how how long it took for him to get yanked with a giant wooden hook. But Josh, I don't know what he did, but I saw some tweet that said Josh must fuck Jenkins' girl, and I was like, maybe.
Yeah, that shit just happened like quick.
Yeah,
it just happened, right? I'm like, Gorgie Ding is still getting minutes. So if he's laboring up and down the court, Josh Jackson must have really done something. And I don't think he's in the plans for the future. It looks like I think he's going to be gone this summer. We'll always have that stretch in early March or whatever that was where he was dropping points. But hey, it is what it is.
Dylan Brooks has a stretch like that. He gets signed to an extension. Josh Jackson has it. Gets sent to the back of the bench.
Yeah. Dylan played a good game. Dylan, he
defended
played
his ass off.
Yeah, he really did. Really did, and that's exactly he and no point will you find us ever saying that he doesn't try really hard. Like that's never the knock on Dylan. It's just like focusing that effort, and he did a great job, man. Defended his ass off, like Rich said, and he also hit some open shots. He was going to the rim instead of. He had a huge M1 that kind of was part of fueling that comeback in the third quarter. Where we took the lead. And I thought he played really well. And Jenkins did a much better job in the second half of the bubble, getting him going at the beginning of the game, getting him some dribble handoffs at the elbow, going towards the rim, putting him in spots to score. And therefore, once he scores at first, then every shot he takes is a little bit better. And then it's like a snowball effect. So really like to see what Dylan was doing in those games. And he definitely played a great second half. So that was good to see. Anyone else that from the playing game that you guys thought excelled or want to mention?
I thought Kyle Anderson played a really solid game. He showed flashes of what the Grizzlies were probably envisioning when they signed him. Just that additional facilitator on the floor. He moves at his pace. He has some nice drives to the basket where he's gonna always be at his pace. He's gonna lull the defender to sleep. He has some nice N1s as well. So I think Kyle played a really solid floor game and showed a really to me, unforeseen before, unique rapport with JV, to where, they were running the screen and roll, and JV was rolling, and Kyle would hit it right in the pocket, and JV would have an easy one, an easy bunny. So definitely Kyle. Also, I think, I don't know if this was due to Tyus. I don't know how much of an impact Tyus being out had on this, but my man DeAnthony Melton struggled a bit for sure. It's just that tweener space really stuck out where he's not necessarily a strong enough ball handler to be the one and initiate the offense, but he's not a good enough shooter to really be the two. So I think he's in that weird tweener space where I saw him really kind of struggling. Still hustling, still scrappy, getting steals, etc. Can finish. But yeah, he's going to definitely have some work to do this summer as well. And I think, he's somebody that would lock in and do that. So.
Yeah, I think not having the primary ball handler on that second unit really exposes what Melton is and isn't. So he's Mr. Do Something, yes, but he is not Mr. Do Something on offense when there's not another point guard. That is not.
He's
what
not
he
Mr. Handle, dribble the ball much. Yeah, he's not part of his bag at all.
Do all the other stuff.
Yeah.
But Brandon Clark with another hyper efficient game. He stepped out and hit 4 or 5 threes. So I thought that was pretty impressive. He really helped open the floor up to give JV some more room down there to operate. Terrible plus minus on Clark, but overall his scoring was very efficient. Obviously, it's kind of
a minus 27. That is on and he shot 72% from the field and 80% from three. I mean, it has to be rebounding. Or, I'm sorry, it has to be defense. But I can't think of a time where he was just completely burned or something. I remember the CJ drives on Ja, which. I think after that first CJ bucket, you probably try to run a double at him and get the ball out of his hands. And I know then you have Dame, okay, but Dame was not at that point, their best player. CJ got 3 straight buckets to put the dagger in it.
He really did.
After the first one, especially the second one, give Ja some help, man. They just left him on an island out there.
Yeah, they left him on an island.
And like you said, it wasn't even like he played bad defense. He just, CJ's a better scorer, and that's just all there was
just
to
a killer. And BC definitely overhelped on the drive where he left Melo wide open for the dagger as well. Definitely.
Oh, man, yeah.
Melo had been broke all night, but he's going to make that one. I knew that was going in when he shot it.
The thing is, he killed us with that exact shot on the first game, too. He had 2 back-to-back threes like that. And then I watched the Blazers a lot throughout the bubble because, they were our competition. And he missed every single other three like that in clutch time. And like there was a couple times in the Nets game where he missed clutch three like that would have put him away. And that's why they had so many close games, is because he never hit those shots for anybody else, but he hit it in our games, like our 2 games. And he's 0 for 5 from 3, and then he ends up going 1 of 6 when he hits that. Then of course he's 3 to the dome, acting like he was 6 of 6, and that's just what Noah does, But like, I probably deserved that for Noah slander earlier in the season. But he did not play a good game. And honestly, like every time he dribbled in the paint, started like working on someone and was going to take like a fadeaway contested 2, like I was like, perfect. Like even if that goes in, that's much better than a Dame or CJ3. But like it just wasn't meant to be. And yeah, like the future is going to be bright. So unless you guys have any thoughts on the play-in, we can move to kind of the upcoming season and then what we expect to happen. Zach, I proposed this question to you before we got on the podcast, but are the Grizzlies in the playoffs next season?
It depends on health, I think. I think Ja is going to average.
Assume health. Assume everyone is healthy on every team.
I would say yes. I think that they were right on the cusp this year, and I can do nothing else but be optimistic and assume that they will be at least slightly better than this year, being that much closer to a 500 team when they outplayed their win total by 10, 12 games this season. That's all I can do as a Grizzlies fan. It's hard for me to say without Winslow, but I really am hanging on him being a really key factor, especially tightening up on the defensive end for the Grizzlies. Because guess what? He could have been guarding CJ at the end of that game and not Ja Morant. So having that go-to defender who's very versatile, where you aren't going to have your 6-foot point guard as exposed as much, that's going to be something that is very key, that all these teams who are going to make deep runs in the playoffs, that's what they have.
Yeah, I mean, you can't – there's some shit you can't tell me. There's a lot of shit that no one can tell me. But one of those things is that we wouldn't have been – we would have kept our 8th seed and we would have beaten the Blazers in the play-in if we'd had a healthy team. And that includes Justice and Jaren healthy and Tyus healthy for the whole bubble experience. I don't know how you could say we wouldn't have kept our 8th seed and also beaten them. First of all, even if we had them for that one game, that play-in game, we beat that team, that Blazers team. There's no way around it. Like we almost beat them handicapped. That's a healthy team is definitely a crucial component. Rich, which like, if we are to be the 8th seed.
I think next year Memphis is better than Portland. Like overall, like if it comes down to the situation, I definitely put Memphis in because your 2 stars over there are going to be a year older, and Memphis, we're assuming that they have everyone. That at least puts them in the 8th slot.
I was going to ask who you think falls out, Rich. I mean, if we are to be the 8th seed, then someone's got to fall out of there.
I say if I were to say current playoff teams who I would not foresee being back next year, I'm going to go with OKC. I think I'm going to go with OKC. Shout out to Chris Paul. He's done a hell of a job this year. I thought he was definitely going to get a waive or buyout trade deadline for sure. But he's been playing his ass off and being a solid leader for them, but I just don't foresee that sustaining. They're clearly in a rebuild. They're headed to a rebuild. So I don't foresee them being back in the playoff picture next year. Shai will definitely be a year older, a year better. For sure, he's a great foundational piece, but I don't see that. So, yeah, I would say OKC. And then when we think of the teams who weren't in this year that we think could be in next year, I'm not even including New Orleans because I know the media wants that. We could throw Golden State in there, of course.
They're almost certainly going to be in.
Yeah, they're
going to be one of the 8 seeds. Yeah. So that's 2 spots that we're looking for now.
So who else falls out?
The Suns too. I'd say if you're a betting man, you almost have to bet that we won't be, just because of the odds. Like because you can't see a situation.
The West is a bitch, man. The West is a bitch. Like I don't want to fucking see Brooklyn or Orlando. Like that could be Memphis and Phoenix. Honestly, like, that shit. The format was trash. But that's another pod for another day. But yeah, man. Like Phoenix
and Spurs look good too at the end of the bubble, and DeMar's really accepted that power forward spot. They didn't have LaMarcus. I think they got some really good play from some young guys. Like they always find these guys, these European guys. I think they have that one young point guard they got with the what's his name, Derek White. I thought he played excellent. So I have to imagine they're going to come for a spot too. Pop's still going to be back. The Kings, we saw them, perform really well last season. This season just sort of firebombs, a lot of injuries. I mean, the Suns, did they build on this 8-0 run and become, like a over 500 team?
I've never seen it, so I can't put my money there because history does not show that would be the case.
The West is a bitch. I would say I would see the Suns in the playoffs before I see the Kings. I just don't see it happening for Sacramento. They're cursed.
So a lot of people are comparing us to the Kings, in that they think that we're going to have a sophomore year of disappointment because we a lot of the national media that Zach Lowe really thinks that we're going to regress in year 2 because we now the fan expectations are high. We've heavily overperformed our expectation nationally, and so he says he sees a situation where we do have a tough second year. Especially considering everyone in the West is really good. I mean, who's the worst team in the West? Minnesota? And they have Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell. They have Karl Anthony Towns, who everyone said
superstars.
Yeah. I mean, 2 all-stars.
Number 1 and a number 2 pick.
Right. So it's crazy. And they have Malik Beasley now, who's in theory a great wing third option.
Yeah, he's a bucket.
Yeah. So it's who, I mean, I think we have to I think we have to have another equally as playing ahead of our years next year as we did this year. We have to basically make a similar level jump to make the playoffs. We have to be, what I'm saying, keep this trajectory of development. And, I don't know whether it will happen or not, but I'm just trying to keep my expectations very much tempered because the West fucking sucks.
Yeah. So I feel like Utah might be one of those teams that struggles next year. So they were, projected to be very good this year. Ended with a 6-11 win percentage, and they're in the 6th slot. But they got a lot of stuff going on between Gobert and Mitchell, who they've had issues for months now. They've not mended fences. Actually, Mike's not performed well there, up to expectations. Kind of a lot of roles are kind of out there in the air. And I could see them being one of those teams that fails to keep up with the rest of the pack as everyone else improves or gets all their guys back, gets all their horses back, and gets back to where they ought to be. And I could see Utah being one of those teams that falls behind and falls out of that playoff picture.
But devil's advocate, you got Spida, you got Donovan Mitchell, who's 23, I think, 24 maybe at tops. He's only going to get better. Yeah.
They would have had a 20-point per game scoring, Bogdanovich right now.
Bogdanovich is coming back. Rudy's still young. They've had their issues for years now. They've never liked each other. So we've seen them be able to still play through that. I just don't see how that team's going to get worse. Maybe they get rid of Mike's salary and bring in someone else, bring in a couple role players that break up his money if they can trade him. But I really don't see that. I mean, optimistically, would hope, of course, that maybe they fall apart from the inside. But I don't know how you could think they're going to fall out reasonably so.
Yeah, well, the way I'm thinking is that they might stay. If they stay where they're at and they don't get better, then someone else is going to overtake them when they get, say, Golden State, get their superstars back. Memphis, if they can make that leap. San Antonio gets their guys back. And if Utah doesn't continue, if they don't improve from where they're at, which – they only were in the 6th slot. It's not like they were in the 3rd or 4th. Then that's how I could see them falling out.
Yeah, I mean, but then that means that we got to be, 10 games over 500 to even snag a spot. Which maybe we see that, maybe we don't. But I mean, it's going to be a horrendous race next year.
It's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, in the truest form. And I mean, I think the Grizz, we always talk about scar tissue in the league. That game versus Portland was a good cut our teeth game, take our lumps. But then playing the Western Conference night after night is similarly taking your lumps, and I think that the Grizz will have to continue to beat up on those bad teams like we did this year and then, go 500 against the good teams in both conferences, and we'll see what happens. But what Well, I'm excited to see the healthy team. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like with Winslow. Like, I was really excited to see that after those practice videos went live and we saw Winslow like barking at Jaron. And then I was like, this guy's going to be like exactly what we need, like the X factor that I think would motivate the guys. And I think it would have been a different story in the bubble. So I don't know what to expect. I really can't even anticipate. But what would you, Rich, what do you want to see next year from the team, maybe transactionally wise? Do you want, the team to, re-up Josh? Do you want them to pay DeAnthony? What do you want to see happen? Or, before the trade deadline, do you want to see them to attempt to make a trade for a wing scorer? A lot of people throw around Zach LaVine, a guy that might be gettable with, trading Brandon Clark and a bunch of our first round picks that we've acquired over the years for a guy that, might be gettable. What would you do if you were the Grizzlies?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely hear your point around Zach LaVine for sure. Like I've seen, Booker and Bill thrown around as well, but let's be realistic. Zach LaVine is gettable, right? Bulls just fired their coach as well. So first and foremost, like definitely excited to see Justice. I think he was the de facto free agent acquisition for this class. And, I think shout out to Josh Jackson. Aside from some minor steps, like it seems like he took everything that the Grizzlies hit him with in stride, was a great teammate, was a great contributor for the hustle. But I don't foresee his future being in Memphis as a Memphis Grizzly. So I think he walks. And DeAnthony, so what I've been seeing is, his price was rising up league-wise. But I don't know what that looks like after the bubble now because his play in the bubble definitely diminished a bit. But I would love to see DeAnthony back. I would love to see him re-up, albeit at a reasonable price because I just really like him as that bench two-headed backcourt monster alongside Tyus. I just really like the way they play off each other. So I would love to see DeAnthony re-up. And I think time and time again, for as long as, we've been Grizzly fans, like wing score has been that constant knock. And honestly, truly, I could give a damn about, defense or if somebody doesn't do something. If you can put the ball in the bucket, that is what the Grizzlies need. And Zach LaVine is somebody who can do that. Zach LaVine is somebody who can slot in at that 2 spot, right? And get buckets. And his usage rate is incredible in Chicago. Of course, it wouldn't be the same here. But I think he also wants to get out of a winning culture. I don't think he's ever experienced a winning culture. Like this dude went from Minnesota to, was it straight to Chicago or wherever?
Yeah, straight to Chicago.
He's been in complete lottery teams his entire career. And I think, he's still young enough to still mesh with the young guys. I think him and Justice might be in the same age range. So I would like that, but it's all dependent upon the package, like who will be willing to have to give up. I'm a huge Brandon Clark fan, for sure. I think, of course, we all know it's still in the draft, but in order to make money, sometimes you got to spend money.
Scared money don't make no money.
Scared money don't make no money.
Young
Money
Jeezy,
talks,
baby.
Shout out Young Jeezy. Oh man, that's tough. But honestly, so look, if we keep beating the dead horse, we know what we need. If the opportunity is there to grab it, the Grizzlies need to take it. Zach LaVine could get you 25 points a night.
I think if it's a situation where, you're around 500, about a month before the trade deadline and you're healthy, but you're just not seeing what you want, then that might be when you start to think about that and reach out and see if that's available. But you got to be willing to part with BC. Interestingly, Zach LaVine's only like a year and a half older than BC. So like you're really not even like you're essentially replacing a young guy with another young guy that could be a part of, if he fits, could be a part of this team for the next 5-6 decade. If he works out, and if he doesn't, you really just got to work for the rest of his contract and then say see you later and try to put another guy with John Jaron once they've hit their max extensions. But I don't know. Like I think I'll have to see the team fully healthy before I can make that call and see what kind of jump BC makes. But that was really concerning to see a minus 27 when he made 4 threes and seemed to be unstoppable. Like I just didn't, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's not as plus minus a darling as everyone thinks. I really don't understand what happened there. Zach, what do you want to see next season? Would you part with BC? Let's say it's January and we're 500 and we're like the 10 seed and everyone's been healthy, but it's just we're just not having enough scoring. And our defense is fine, like middle of the pack. We just can't score well enough. Like teams packing the paint on Ja, like bum rushing him off the pick and roll. he's shooting the three a little bit better, but he's never going to be Steph. He's never going to be Kyrie, from the three. So what would you do at that point? Would you try to make a splash, or would you just say let's ride another year with these guys?
I think that it depends. So it depends on a couple things. To me, depends like how is BC playing? Is he holding it down on the second unit? How close is he to getting 20 points per game? Are his minutes up from this year? Kind of what's because I think there are minutes left on the table this season that he could have played that he didn't. Maybe because some of the lineups that we had. Now that Jenkins had a year under his belt to kind of play with that a little bit. How do Brandon and Jaren? They really didn't play that much together this season, so I'd really be curious to see how those two pair together. But like Rich said, offense is a big blind spot or weak spot for Memphis. They were 23rd in the league in offense per cleaning the glass. On the defensive end, they're pretty average, right in the middle at 15th, and that's with who I believe is one of the anchors of the defense, Jaren, missing time. So if you get more time for Jaren in there, he's really the only true rim protector that gets minutes. JV is a good defender on other post players, but as far as like protecting the rim, he just shrivels away and does absolutely nothing pretty much. But yeah. I think that it is going to take another player, like pretty much a Dillon Brooks upgrade. So I don't know if Dillon in his current role is going to be the guy, unless he becomes more efficient somehow. He's not going to be the guy that is the missing piece to this core. But if you could get an upgrade on Dillon Brooks, I think I even said like Dillon Brooks, I've said this in our articles and podcasts that his greatest value to the Grizzlies is honestly going to come on the trade market at some point. And that could be this year. It could be another year. Could be what I'd like to see is like a trade for Buddy Hield, something like that, who's disgruntled out in Sacramento. Of course, Vlade just left. They got some things going on. So his attitude could change out there. But I consider that an upgrade for Dillon. Could see them taking Dillon off our hands plus some picks, some salary filler, just to kind of rectify that situation with Buddy. But that's the kind of guy that I think could really put Memphis over the edge. Someone who's shooting the 40+% at a high clip, high efficiency.
Good defender.
Good enough defender. I think that's the type of player that would be very helpful for Memphis.
27 years old, though. Very old.
Or 28 or 29. We don't actually know how old Buddy Hield is.
He's listed at 27, which means he's like 34. But he is probably a more cerebral player than what Zach LaVine's known as. And maybe you don't have to give up Brandon Clark to get him, but I feel like you have to. I feel like we're going to get sandbagged for Brandon Clark in any trade we try to get because everyone knows what we need and knows that that he's a piece that we maybe would give away. I don't know what the front office feels on him, but I think the ultimate goal is to have Brandon Clark be the 4 and Jaren be the 5. I think Brandon Clark really kicks in his truest Brandon Clarkiest when JV's off the roster, right? After JV's got 2 more years on his contract. So I think, that he's kind of batting down the hatches and manning that post right now at the 5 spot as a really, really strong, constantly good post player. That's just great for the team. Seems to be the guys all love him. He's like a really good mentor for the guys. And he's a vet for purposes of this team. And then the ultimate goal would be for his contract to roll off. And then, or maybe we trade him in his last year because he's got a great deal. It descends in price, and then start Brandon at the 4 and Jaren at the 5, and play this really, really future-y, switchy, athletic front court that both can shoot threes and block shots and are just all over the place. That would be the goal, and it would be a shame to trade Brandon Clark before we could see that consistently in action.
Yeah. And honestly, one of the things that Brandon has going in his favor the most with this team is his chemistry with Ja. I think his chemistry with Ja far supersedes Ja and Jaren's chemistry at this point. They're throwing alley-oops to each other. I mean, you see all the highlights where Brandon's throwing them to Ja. Like, that's not super common in the league. And so those two guys play very well together, which is probably going to decrease the odds that Memphis is willing to let go of him. Just because he elevates Ja's game and gives him more options on both ends of the floor. So I think that is kind of an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I don't think the Grizzlies want to get rid of BC. They're not shopping him at all. I just think when they pick up the phone and call anybody and say, hey, we want insert name, Buddy Hield, Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, like those are the loftier guys, then that team's immediately going to say, okay, great. We're going to take Dylan Brooks and Brandon Clark at minimum, and then also some picks. And then if that's not even on the table at all, then they're going to hang up the phone. And there's no reason to give up players like that for just a few picks and Dylan Brooks and Gorgie Dang. Like there's no, what do they get out of that? The teams that are trading these guys want assets in return for them, and assets beyond who knows what the pick could be and beyond some second rounders in 2023. So it's like, I think that you're going to have to swing big, and unless you see BC being a part of this championship team with these guys, then I feel like you have to. Unless next year they come out and win 20 straight games or something, and you're like, okay, I get it. But it's a tough spot to be in. It really is. Like it's the proper amount of riches. However, draft lottery coming up. Moving on to a different topic, Grizzlies have a 2.3% chance of jumping in the top 4. That would be insane. I mean, I don't know if I would like that. I guess I would, because then the theory is we could add another young talent with this core and then go from there. Or convey the pick to the Celtics, which is, I think, what our original intention was. But I think it's pretty much set that we're not going to be adding talent via the draft. At least not a third guy, not a guy of like a Zach LaVine stature or, even a Buddy Hield stature through the draft. So we have to get a guy like that in trade. But you guys have any thoughts on drafting? It's possible that next year we fall out of the playoffs and end up in the lottery, because the West is just that good. And we just happenstancely find ourselves with the number 11 pick. But then the number 11 pick, how many times have we seen that turn into a legitimate guy? That's a tough place to be, because you can't really make any steals there. But also, like, you're not high enough to get a guy that, like, is, we know is going to be good kind of thing. Unless you luck into a Devin Booker or something. Any draft thoughts?
This draft is just not that impressive.
It's weird.
Super grateful that we had the number 2 pick last year, not this year.
I'd kind of like to be this year, though, around 14 or 15, because there's a lot of 3-and-D shooters in this draft. There's a lot of guys that people are saying, like, this guy could be, like a lights-out shooter and defender. And maybe
Ray from Villanova comes to mind. He's
there's that kid at Vanderbilt, too. There's a kid at Vanderbilt.
Or Aaron Nesmith.
Yeah.
Yeah, the high end of this lottery, like the top 5, top 10 picks, not impressive, but there are definitely some gems that can be found later, especially on the wing. But at the end of the day, like we said, like we're hoping that Justice can be that switchable, long, rangy wing defender, multi-positional. We need a scorer, somebody else that can put the ball in the bucket.
Something that I noticed too was in the playing game, like, I agree, Rich, like, is that we had on the first possession of the game, we ran Kyle at the point and had Ja playing off ball. And I really liked that different look. Like, you could tell Jenkins was going with something different to throw off the Blazers from the very beginning of the game. They were just expecting to pick up Ja, and that was just going to be the way it was going to go. But Ja started off ball for a couple possessions. And I like that. Like, he can, he's a good cutter. He's a cerebral basketball player. He's obviously dangerous in the backdoor cut for a dunk. And then at the end of the shot clock, you can give him the ball and you can get downhill on a dribble handoff. But I like to see that. So I think they'll run a lot of that with Justice too. Once you get Justice in the lineup, and presumably Justice is what you hope is like Kyle 3.0, right? He can be the point guard. He can shoot the open three. He can defend his ass off. And he's actually athletic enough to, defend everybody and not just kind of defend based on like long, IQ. So that's kind of what you hope, is that Justice is Kyle 3.0, and then you hope that we find the Dylan 2.0, I think, is kind of what our hope is as Grizzlies fans. But is there you guys have any other thoughts that we haven't discussed? Long time till basketball starts. Like January to March is when they're saying games are going to come back. Based on Michelle Roberts had a meeting apparently with this is a tweet that I obviously don't know, but she told the players that the collective bargaining agreement is going to be renegotiated. It's going to be ripped up due to the force majeure provision of the pandemic, and they're going to have to renegotiate it, and that they think that the negotiations will go fine, but it's still going to be a process. So therefore, games won't come back till, maybe early spring next year. So that we're looking at 6 months without Grizzlies basketball is probably the likely situation.
Been there before, almost.
Yeah. And that was basically a standard offseason was what we just had. And then we had this little taste, and now we're going for an even longer period. So it's tough. Like that, it's going to be tough. And you hope that they can get that negotiated and we're back in the gym sooner than later. With fans, without fans, we don't know.
I think, guess got to stay tuned to the playoffs. Are there any first-round matchups that you guys are particularly excited about in the East or the West, Rich?
Yeah, definitely excited about, of course, Lakers, Blazers. Like, of course, come on now. Like, come on, man. Like, come on now. I'm definitely excited about that one. For
you
sure,
can show that hat now. Grizzlies are done, so you can. Go ahead
Grizzlies are done, man. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like the Lakers are just going to beat the shit out of the Blazers.
Yeah, I feel like I was on Twitter.
It's going to be a sweep.
Like, I don't know who is watching these Blazer games thinking that they're about to get the Lakers trouble. Like,
I can't fathom that. Like,
so
who guards Anthony Davis?
Right,
like Hazonia? Get the fuck out of here. Whiteside?
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely
Whiteside
interested to see Luka versus the Clippers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll be an interesting series. Especially also the 4-5, I believe, in the East is Philly and Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely think Philly is not going anywhere, but I've really become a Matisse Thybulle fan. And Brett Brown just recently stated that he's going to insert him in the starting lineup just because he's their best wing defender. And Boston has a richest of young wings, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who I love watching play as well. So definitely, man, just looking forward to those and just looking forward to this all-day basketball still. I think, like, tomorrow shit starts at, like, 1:30 or, like, 2:30. And
playoff
it's
games at 1:30,
all
man.
night. Like,
it's amazing.
It's fucking beautiful. So definitely looking forward to still having the playoffs at least. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't have any. I like the Raptors. I'm excited to see what they do. I can't wait for the second round East matchups. That's going to be fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And you got Celtics, Raptors presumably, and Bucks are playing the I don't know who the winner of the 4-5. Who's that?
The Pacers Heat.
Pacers Heat.
Yeah. So you're thinking Bucks Heat be fantastic. Jimmy Butler too. I'm excited to see a lot more of the East than I think and the West. I think the Jazz are going to get smoked. Conley just let the bubble. Shout out Mike Conley, birth of his newborn son, Elijah. So congratulations on that. Definitely why you leave the bubble for that, and that's how it goes. But that, of course, leaves the Jazz high and dry. Not his fault, but it is a fact. So they're going to be kind of struggling, I think, to win against. And I'm excited to see what Michael Porter Jr. does too. Like if he can be that superstar scorer at the wing that the Nuggets have always needed, and see what he does in the playoffs. But it's exciting to watch constant wall-to-wall basketball, and that'll have to tide me over until the Grizzlies return in like 2023 or whenever.
Hey, but the good news is by then, like, if it takes that long, a lot of these old guys will be out of the league, and the Grizzlies young guys will be like in their prime.
Exactly. we just fast forward to our prime.
We won't have to suffer through the middling years again.
So, quick contrast story. So, I was at my dentist's office, and I was it's Main Street Dental. Shout out Main Street Dental. Shout out Dr. Rump on Main Street. And she has a plethora of dental hygienists. I feel like every time I go in there, I have a different one. They're all very friendly and nice. One of them, I get in the chair and I'm getting a filling done actually. And so they recline you and they have a TV on above you, and it's ESPN is usually what I ask to put on, which is a stereotypical dude thing. But like, what else am I going to watch? I'm not going to watch like Good Morning America or whatever else they got. So I turn on ESPN and what like NBA's on, and they're talking about the bubble, and the dental hygienist asked me, what's the deal with that? She had no idea what was happening. Like, she had no idea that they were all going to go down to Orlando and live in this bubble at Disney World. Literally had no idea. And so I was like explaining it to her, mansplaining, of course, like all men do, especially white guys. And so I was just in there mansplaining to her about the bubble. And she was like, oh, one of my friends is on the Grizzlies. And I was like, oh, really? Who? And she's like, John Conchar. And I'm like, oh, Conchar, yeah. And then I almost asked, how do you know him? But it immediately occurred to me that she probably banged him. And it was just a weird, like, it was like and maybe this is me foisting this on this girl, but like in my head, I thought, nice, John. Like, I was like, nice, dude. And because it was like, I was just like, how would you be friends with him? He's not from here. Like he's from Indiana and he played in the G League mostly. And like, how would you have met him? Like, I don't know. Like they could very well have this very wholesome relationship.
Could have just like met downtown or something.
I don't know.
It
had a sexually charged.
He's like a really charming guy. Like he has a cult following and like his jitty stuff.
Yeah,
so,
Jitty.
He's a really engaging guy.
I mean, he's a handsome guy. He's an NBA basketball player. Like I'm not like clowning on her for potentially, tasting those waters. But like, I'm just saying that like I got like a weird vibe, and like I almost asked, "How do you know him?" But then I thought that could be a very awkward question, right? Because then she'd be like, "Oh, we're just friends," or it's possible she would have explained to me the depth of their relationship, and maybe they like met at church or a youth group or something. I don't know, but it just had a vibe, man. Like, and I just remember thinking, like, nice, John. Like, so shout out, dental hygienist and Conchar. I
fucks with Conchar too. I hope he keeps one of the two ways next year, for sure. I like what he brings to the court. We can get rid of Yuta and bring somebody else.
Yeah, Yuta. Yeah,
nice guy.
Shoots that hoe when he comes in though. Like every time he comes in, he shoots it. Looks like Kobe with respect to his shot attempt when he comes in. Oh man, yeah, it's a bummer. So we'll have to figure out what stuff we're going to talk about. I guess we'll be like every other blog boys and talk about what happens in the playoffs, and try to have to learn more about these other teams. But excited to see what happens, and mostly excited to see the Battle of LA. I think we're all waiting for the Western Conference Finals to occur and to see what happens.
And
does Avery Bradley fly back in the bubble? Does LeBron play some 2:30 a.m. phone calls to him in like a black duster and like a hat, like in the middle of Orlando, being like, "Hey man, it's safe here. Like we need you." I will say though the Lakers don't have anyone to guard Dame and CJ.
They don't. They have no perimeter defenders.
Right. So
Avery Bradley was the perimeter defender.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's a great perimeter defender. Like you wonder how that's going to. I mean, they can't trade buckets with them. I think inevitably LeBron's going to have to end up guarding in the fourth quarter Dame or CJ, whichever one of them's going off, and we'll see that happen. But that's going to be kind of a tough hang to see like some of their guards. Dame or CJ.
Yeah, they're gonna light it up. But whoever's guarding AD is barbecue chicken. So just get the damn ball to AD and get out the way.
Yeah,
fucking.
I think that's
Zach Collins, just fucking move.
Yeah, Zach Collins, man. I remember everyone talking about him when like they were like, "Oh, when Zach Collins and Nurkic come back," as if like putting them together in terms of like quality. Man, like
Nurkic is like,
I did not see it. Yeah,
Zach Collins, no. Hey, Zach Collins has the drip though for sure. I'll give him that. Zach Collins be fresh. I'll give him that.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, he looks like he should be good, but he just he's not 6'10" with the racket like Chandler Parsons.
Movie star. I guess like the jawline and shit. He's handsome.
Yeah.
He's like wears a leather jacket for sure, and he's in the alleyway snapping. I just know.
Yeah, he has a West Side Story look to him for sure.
West Side Story vibes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Like he like sings sings musicals in the locker room. Like he calls out defensive assignments like with the NSYNC song. Yeah.
This is definitely the content that people are here for.
That's why you're listening to us on Nothing But Net on Dash Radio. This is probably the content they want. They don't want to hear about the bum-ass Grizzlies.
Yeah, no one's tuned in for that, probably.
If you're still listening, Conchar gets it, and Zach Collins is a creaser.
All right, wrap it up. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Backdoor Cut show on iTunes or wherever you are listening. And please listen to us on Dash Radio's Nothing But Net channel. Until next time, see you later.
Go Grizz.
Peace.